right, welcome into the show. This is Green Dot Daily, Action Network's daily sports betting show. Brendan Glasheen with you live. We are here every weekday at noon Eastern, streaming live in the free-to-download, award-winning Action Network app. Show pops right up when you open the app. It's really quite easy. But you can also go to YouTube as well. Action Network YouTube. We are streaming live there as well. Green Dot Daily is presented by BetMGM. You can use the bonus code ACTION when you sign up to get up to $1,000 first bet insurance. Terms and conditions apply. On today's show, Matt Moore joins us to give us a second half preview of the NBA. Games resume tomorrow in the association. Evan Abrams also stops by, our director of research and media. He weighs in on some things to keep in mind with the NBA resuming on Thursday night. Jason Sobel dives into the Honda Classic with us. Also gives us a preview, a sneak peek of what to expect on the Gimme coming up later today at 5:30 Eastern time. We start, though, with Anthony Dabbundo talking some college basketball. He joins us now on Green Dot Daily. So, Dabbundo, we had the three-man weave crew on Monday, on Tuesday, and now we get you. Looking forward to your breakdown of UConn and Providence. As Jim Root likes to say, I don't want to put words in Jim's mouth, but Jim is a big fan of tuning into these Big East games. I tend to agree. Creighton Marquette was excellent last night. There was some chaos there at the end. It came down to officiating. No surprises there. These games are that close. So UConn's laying quite a few here against Providence. UConn's at home in stores, laying 7.5. What angle would you like to take on this game?
Yeah, so I think the number is maybe a point or two too high here on UConn. Providence does have the physical ability to kind of match up with them. They're not going to be overwhelmed by UConn's size or their length. Providence, a very physical team, very competitive on the glass at both ends of the floor, which is a huge key against UConn, given how dominant they are. And I agree with you. I think the Big East night tonight is probably the best watch in the entire country. But I'm going to actually look toward the under a little bit here. The number has come down a little bit, sitting at 142.5, 143 out there. That's a little low. It was sitting 144, 44.5 last night. I liked it more there. I would need the 144 to play it. But I actually think this is a matchup of two teams who just don't really let you get to the rim and make shots there. UConn is a top 10 defense at shots attacking the rim. Providence is top 40. Like I mentioned, both of these teams crash the offensive glass and are pretty successful there. But both these teams are also good at negating that defensively. They're big teams that hit the glass defensively. So I don't think you're going to get quite as many second chance looks. And Providence and UConn are two teams that have shot a bit above their heads from the perimeter this year. When you look at some of the shooting numbers that from past seasons of their shooters, so there is potentially some aggression coming for these perimeter offenses. This feels like a game that's going to be slogged and slowed down into the half court as well. And really, another big example or key to this game is how is it called? Because traditionally the Big East it's known for its physical play and whatnot. Providence thrives on that. They get to the line a ton. They have one of the highest free throw rates in the entire country. They get a ton of points from the line. UConn does have a tendency to get a little bit handsy and physical and commit a ton of fouls. They are at home. So the question is, what kind of whistle do we get tonight in terms of Providence getting free points from the line? Because it is hard to see Providence getting consistent half-court offense in this game without the free throw line. So I do like the under a little bit. But like I said, I want that 144. I think it's it's come down just out of range for me to play now at 142.5. So I'm not going to bet this. Could be a good live under game as well as this slows down into the second half.
Under, taking a look at the betting splits via the Action app, the cash and tickets coming in on the Providence Friars. As far as the total is concerned, 65% of the dollars coming on the under, but the tickets split 50-50. And yeah, looking at the Providence free throw numbers, 75%, 35% from three. They're a different beast, as we know, when they play it. What is the new arena called? I did this last week.
I'm still calling it the Dunk.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know what they're calling it now, but I'm still calling it the Dunk. They're not there tonight, though. They did beat UConn, completely shut them down in the half court in the first meeting at the Dunk. Now, in UConn, it's a huge rivalry, a huge game for seeding, and likely to be a quarterfinal matchup in the Big East tournament, too. So we could get a rubber match. It's going to be a really fun game tonight. Probably the highlight of what is otherwise a pretty middling Wednesday slate for late February.
Well, don't say that because we got Sun Belt action. You like You like James Madison tonight. James Madison, which I still think of James Madison. I think of the CAA when I think football. But, of course, in basketball, they're in the Sun Belt. You like them against Marshall. Why?
Yeah, James Madison, in honor of President's Day this week, I'm going to take the Dukes. Nothing to do with it, of course. But you have to be able to guard and transition against Marshall. Marshall's, they run at the fastest pace in the entire country offensively. They run out and transition at a top 10 rate. It's pretty much how they, it's run and gun, space the floor, shoot a bunch of shots, pace and space being the D'Antoni way. But JMU is a pretty good transition defense. They're top 80 in the country nationally in percentage in transition defense. And if there's a flaw with Marshall is that they don't really have a ton of depth. And so foul trouble immediately becomes a concern. They only play 6-7 guys. They do foul at a decent rate. But the thing is, James Madison is a very aggressive attack downhill, get to the rim team. You can get to this Marshall defense at the rim. They're pretty average there defensively. And James Madison gets to the line at a top 25 rate nationally. So I think James Madison at home in a good spot here. They did beat them at Marshall as well. And we're able to really slow down this offense and keep them out of transition. I think that's the main key here, and that they're going to be a little bit undervalued. I bet this up to about -2, 2.5 on the Dukes at home. And like I said, Marshall, I'm just worried about them as we get down towards the end of the season here with how little depth they do have and how much they run.
All right. And looks like the people are also in on the James Madison. They're the Dukes, right? The Dukes?
Yep. The Dukes.
Okay. People like the Dukes, like Dabbundo. Okay, let's transition to soccer. Champions League, Man City in action today. I always get excited when we have one of the Wonder Goal guys on because the best part about our show being live at noon is this comes right at you, 3 o'clock Eastern today. Are you going to back Man City on the money line, or do you like the dog?
I'm going to ride with the German boys. Red Bull Leipzig +0.5 at home against Man City, the best team in the world. Anytime you can bet against the best team in the world, you have to do it. Of course, but really this comes down to Leipzig's improvement. You have to. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, you have to do it in this spot. Marco Rose, since taking over as the manager at Leipzig in October, took over for Domenico Tedesco. They have a +1.33 expected goal difference per 90 minutes in Germany. Now, Germany isn't quite as good as the Prem or even Spain, but that is the second best number of any team in the top 5 leagues in Europe. So even if you apply a little bit of a deflator on that number because of the league quality, they've still put up very impressive numbers, and it's been with defense more so than attack. They concede the fewest shots per 90 in the Bundesliga, the fewest shots on goal per 90, and they allow the average longest shot distance. So teams are not able to get good, high-quality chances from close to the goal. They force you to shoot from distance. City's attack hasn't quite been the same this year, and I've been saying this for about a month now, and they went from about 2.5 XG per 90 last year. They were dominant, won the Prem. This year, they're down closer to about 2.1. They're just not getting the same level of wide production from their wide players around Erling Haaland, who has been incredible for them. And another big note, Kevin De Bruyne has not traveled to Germany for this match. He will miss this. And he's really their main central creator. He drifts wide, sends in crosses as well. He's their primary chance creator from the middle of the park, will not be there. And I always say this in these Champions League first legs, anytime you have a road favorite like this, if it's the last 10 to 15 minutes of the match in a normal, league type situation, you're going to see the favorite, push numbers forward, press the issue, try to go get those 3 points. In this situation, in a Champions League tie, we've seen this from Guardiola time and time again, the Man City manager. He tends to play, if anything, lean conservatively and take a more cautious approach to lower the variance and to try to, save his team from counterattacking defensive issues. Well, in the last 10 to 15 minutes here, if this is tied, I think City's in a situation where they're not going to be sending a ton of numbers forward, trying to push for that game-winning goal, knowing that they have the second leg back home in Manchester coming up in March. So I think this is a good spot for Leipzig at home, catching a half goal. I do think this ultimately probably ends in a draw.
At -115, is that still okay to play?
Yeah, it's starting a little bit juiced up. City was as high as -130, -140 last week. But yeah, anything -110, 115, I'm okay with. If you start getting up to -120, I would pass.
All right, good to know. That's coming up at 3 o'clock. So take that with. Be sure to keep that in mind, folks, because that's coming up very soon. Dabbundo, I think that's it with you today. When can we find you again? Wonder Goal coming up this week?
Yes, we have an episode out now previewing the Europa League tomorrow, and then we will have a new episode Thursday with previewing the weekend slate, as well as an interview with Eric Winalda, former U.S. men's national team player. So
Eric Winalda, love that guy. He's a good guy.
We're going to talk some MLS tonight too, so it should be interesting.
All right, look forward to that. Dabbundo, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.
Okay, on to the NBA. As we said, season resumes tomorrow. Here are some second half storylines, some midseason storylines. How about those Sacramento Kings? Plus 360 right now on BetMGM to make the playoffs. They're third in the West. Preseason win total was 34.5. They enter this final quarter of the season already at 32 wins. You can find this team at like plus 5,000 to come out of the West. I know the West got a lot better, but man, the Kings, they're being slept on just a little bit as the 3 seed in the West. Nikola Jokic, he might have something to say about that. Right now, the Western Conference leader, Denver Nuggets, he's the star MVP frontrunner at minus 250. Preseason on BetMGM was plus 900. He's looking to win a third straight MVP. Last time someone did that, thank you, producer Gifford, who worked in the Celtics, Larry Bird, 83 to 86. The great days of Celtics basketball. They haven't won a title. Well, they won in 08. That was a good year. Anything is possible. But yeah, Larry Bird, he's the man. And Jokic is the man too. And of course, the KD Kyrie shakeups in the West. Suns are plus 230 to win the West. They are the favorite in the West, favorite to come out of the West in the NBA Finals. The Mavericks, they of course added Kyrie Irving just before the trade deadline. Irving and the Mavs plus 750 to come out of the West, plus 1,100 in the preseason. The Suns were plus 750 pre-Durant. So those are some things that we have in mind. Really, that hasn't changed all that much in terms of what we saw like last week. And now hopefully we can see some of this come to fruition, at least in some cases, speaking to Durant. Matt Moore joins us. He's one of our co-hosts on the Buckets podcast, our NBA guy here at Action Network. And Evan Abrams joins the conversation, our director of research. Good to have Evan on. I think the first time we've had Evan on since the NFL season ended. So, fellas, 3-man panel. Let's dive into this. We're going to start with a team we haven't discussed yet, the LA Clippers, because, I mean, forget KD to the Suns, Kyrie Irving to the Mavs. Russell Westbrook stays in the West. What an impactful move, Matt Moore. Russell Westbrook to the LA Clippers. He reunites with Paul George. He had one of his best seasons with Oklahoma City. I mean, you just can't help but talk about how big of an addition this is.
I mean, sure, I guess a little bit. Yeah, look, Russ, obviously a polarizing figure these days. Some of the stuff here, I think it's hard to get an accurate gauge on Russ's value. The numbers with him with the Lakers were actually surprisingly good. His overall numbers were bad, which people will point to, but those were the minutes without Anthony Davis and LeBron James on the floor, which if you look at the rest of that Lakers roster, I don't know that anyone could pull that roster up to a positive. And actually the numbers with LeBron were quite good. So the idea is, he comes to this team. The Clippers openly campaigned for Russ, like very much in the public eye. 2 reporters were open on Instagram campaigning to get Russ to come to the Clippers. I'm not sure how thrilled the front office was about the idea, but that's what the Stars wanted, and the Stars get their way in the NBA, and especially with the Clippers. What's interesting is that this isn't necessarily a great basketball fit. What the Clippers need is a point guard that can set the table and then move off ball and maintain spacing. That's the opposite of what Westbrook does. He needs the ball in his hands. He struggles with shooting. It's going to be like a complicated dynamic to try and get that to work. This is kind of difficult. Moreover, I think is the problem that just really his teams haven't won at a significant rate. Since leaving the Thunder, teams are 48% against the spread when Westbrook plays, and that gets worse if you take out the year with the Wizards at 56%. So I don't think that there's any reason the market kind of reflects this. There's no reason to upgrade the Clippers because they added Russell Westbrook. Some books actually went so far as downgrade them. That's a bit far. This team's still real good. Russ isn't a negative. I'm just not sure that he's a positive at this point.
We discussed, and I'll get to Evan here in a second because he's got some notes on Westbrook since he left the Oklahoma City Thunder. But Matt, there was a report in The Athletic yesterday or the day before. It seems like that he might start for this team. He might start for the Clippers as opposed to coming off the bench, which I think won over some Westbrook fans and folks that again, it was with LeBron. But we don't need to go through that whole that backstory and that timeline. But could you be won over if Westbrook eventually did come off the bench? What's the impact of him starting?
I think that the only way that he comes here is if he's given a starting spot. I think that was probably part of the conversations between Westbrook's camp, the Clippers, and the Bulls, which are the other team that he was heavily involved in conversations for. I don't think he liked coming off the bench in LA. I thought he felt it was beneath him. And it's hard to blame a guy that won an MVP for feeling like that. So players are very slow to adjust to that role. The Clippers have wanted an upgrade at point guard. Kawhi Leonard has specifically told the front office, according to people I've talked to, that he's wanted an upgrade at point guard. I don't know that Russ is the guy that he wanted. I reported he wanted Fred VanVleet or Kyle Lowry. Both the asking prices on those two guys were too high, which is why they got Eric Gordon. What's interesting here is, I think for bettors, is it's the 6-man market, where Russ was the favorite there for a long time at a minus number. And on buckets and on this program, I kept telling people, like, don't bet this. Like, there's a good chance that he gets moved and then he starts. And I think that this is going to take him out of contention, because I do think he starts the rest of the way. Even if it might be better for him to come off the bench and start Eric Gordon, I think really when you look at this, it's going to be Russ starting. Now, he might be the first one off the court along with Kawhi, and then come back in with the Kawhi Russ stagger in the second unit. There's a lot of ways that you can manage this. Him closing games is certainly going to be an interesting question for them to manage. But I think as far as the regular season goes, like, this puts a lot of value on Malcolm Brogdon, who's the new favorite, and this puts some value on Norman Powell, who I still think is going to come off the bench and still put up numbers for this Clippers team.
I'm afraid your 6th-man PSA is too little too late for our friend Brandon Anderson.
Yeah, that's over.
That's okay. Evan.
Got that 10-1. Good job for the CLV. Eat that CLV, Brandon.
Look forward to more Matt Moore and Brandon Anderson on the Buckets podcast. It gets way more in depth and detailed. I'll leave it at that. Evan Abrams, weigh in on the Westbrook move. This is his 5th team now. If you count the last year with the Thunder, he's now been on 5. If you count Utah, it's 6 teams now for Westbrook in the last 5-6 years now. What do we need to know about Westbrook's impact from a betting standpoint?
Yeah, I'll just say this off the top. These are 2 quotes from Clippers players. Marcus Morris, we need the personality. We need the veteran. He's been in the playoffs a lot, been to the championship. Paul George,
True.
Suck that John didn't work, but what John brought is what we need. A guy that can get up and down the floor and get us some easy baskets in transition. Now, what he's saying is correct in the sense that the 3-point field goal in the corner, the Clippers are like 7th in the NBA. The Lakers were like 26th in the NBA. So theoretically, what Westbrook could bring to the Clippers and what Marcus Morris and Paul George are talking about isn't Russell Westbrook. They're looking for some player that isn't that player, and that's what Matt said. So I think they're wishing Russ is a player that Russ isn't. And I think really that's the issue, is they like the idea of Russell Westbrook. Clippers, 24th in pace, 22nd in fast break points. So I think they want to run a little bit, and that's why they brought Russ here. But I'm just not sure he's that player anymore. Now, listen, I get it. He has 111, 110 games of playoff experience. That's going to be big when you mix that with Kawhi. PG's been there a few times. Like, that team gets there, they're going to be a hard out. But my thing is, Russ is going to get too much time. Like, I want him in that 6-man role. I want him getting like the uppity minutes, the minutes where maybe he's coming from a different point of view. But to me, we're just not going to get that player because, like Matt said, he's going to want more. He's going to want to be a bigger part of the offense, which I think gets in the way a little bit of what the Clippers want to do.
He's a volume player, to your point.
Yeah.
Like, he needs the floor for an extended period to put up gaudy numbers as he did when he won MVP. More so talking about his time with the Thunder. And Matt Moore alluded to this. We can show how the championship odds were really not all that much affected. NBA championship odds for the Clippers before the signing, plus 900. After the signing, plus 900. So not all much has changed, Evan.
No, but 10-1 right now, I believe, at BetMGM. They were 14-1 on February 1st. The one thing I do want to mention, if you go back to the beginning of the season, back to preseason, this is still the 2nd highest odds the Clippers have been. So if you're looking for value, it is a little bit of a better price if you like them in the preseason or if you like them earlier in the year. The one thing I looked at was 45.5, which is their win total. They need to go 13-8 in their last 21 games. And ironically enough, 21 games, it's like the fewest of any team in the NBA. So they don't have a lot of games to go, and they need to go 13-8 to get over the 45.5. The one ATS angle I'll give, Clippers this season, 23-38 first half spread, second worst in the NBA, and 61-82 first half spread over the last 2 seasons, worst in the NBA. So something needs to change probably to keep pace, and maybe they're getting a little bit of juice in that first half, kind of bringing that number down. But to me, that's significant.
This all comes full circle, Matt Moore, because the team Russ used to play for, the Oklahoma City Thunder, you actually see value in giving a look to the Thunder to possibly make the play and make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think if you look at this, it's been interesting to watch because, the Lakers make all these trades and their number is skyrocketing, and the Lakers are definitely better, and they're also significantly still kind of outside the picture. Like the Lakers are currently a full 3 games behind the Thunder in the loss column. Thunder have the edge and tiebreaker. Like that matters when you talk about this last spot. You got to get past the Blazers. You got to get past a number of these other teams, but I do think that the Thunder this is a good team. Last 15 games, the Thunder have the 3rd best net rating in the NBA. They haven't been just okay. They've been a really good team. And if we kind of extrapolate this over the course of the season, they've been the best team against the spread this season, and they were the best team against the spread last season, 63%. And now against the spread doesn't mean straight up, but I think we are seeing that the Thunder are still undervalued in the market. It's representative of how the odds makers simply do not kind of give this team as much credit. They are an extremely well coached team. And talking to people in the league, like that's the first thing that they say about the Thunder is those guys know what they're doing. They're well organized and they know how to play, and they've just kind of found answers. I was looking at lineup data this weekend and it's a mess. They just tried different stuff all the time, but a lot of it, nothing really fails. Everything just kind of works or kind of doesn't, and it's enough to get them kind of through. So I think there's value for them to make the play-in game. Making the playoffs a plus 450, I think that's tougher, but we're talking about like a 1-game situation. I do kind of wonder, OKC is such a pain. They might be well built for these types of environments. They went on the road to face that Lakers team, an environment where LeBron was going to set the all-time scoring record. And that's a distraction, but it's also like a really big atmosphere. And the Thunder just handled them. They were comfortable in that game. So I think there's some value there. The other thing I'll say about the Thunder is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's back to the favorite for most improved player at plus 130, tied with Lauri Markkanen. The Jazz seem to be heading in the opposite direction after their trades at the deadline. Like they are definitely positioning themselves for the future, looking at draft positioning. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if Lauri Markkanen had calf soreness at some point in the month of March. And if that happens, then I think that takes him out of consideration. Jalen Brunson hasn't really made a huge dent in terms of voters, it doesn't seem like. And then the other kind of candidates in this field don't seem to really be making that much of a dent. Tyrese Halliburton's fallen off. I still think getting Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at a plus number for most improved, given he's put up MVP level numbers, I think there's really good value on that now too.
Yeah, Evan, it feels like just the market hasn't corrected itself yet. Like the Thunder are still being priced as if they're in the Wembanyama sweepstakes. They're not. As Brandon Anderson said earlier this week on Green Dot Daily, that ship has sailed. You're not catching San Antonio. You're not catching Houston. Never mind the teams in the East at the bottom of the barrel, Detroit, Charlotte. You have any last thoughts here on the Thunder and what the no longer Westbrook Thunder, that is?
Yeah, 5th easiest schedule going forward, which goes to Matt's point. The price at 240 is good. They're ranked 7th or 8th in play-in odds. So if you look in order, they're like the 7th or 8th team, and that doesn't really mesh with me. Right now, number 4 is the Lakers. They were like minus 110. They're not even in right now. So I think the market is placing LeBron in a place that I think many people, the Lakers, really aren't. So I think there's value on a ton of teams if you think the Lakers won't get there, because right now they're 4th. It's Minnesota, Golden State, New Orleans, and the Lakers all minus money, and everyone else is plus money. So there is an opportunity to get into that spot. The one thing I'll say, second half, OKC has been absurd. 32-13-1 second half against the spread when they've been trailing 22-6-1. So come back, kids.
I will also add, since we've had Matt Moore since the start of NBA season, I can't get out of my head Matt's angle or trend when teams play the Thunder. How do they look the next night? And that's more so of talking about their next opponent, but it's just a reflection of how gritty and how much this team really does wear you down. So Matt Moore, Evan Abrams, thanks for stopping by. Looking forward to the resumed NBA tomorrow night.
Thanks, Brendan.
On to the world of golf. The PGA Tour heads to South Florida, Palm Beach Gardens for the Honda Classic. Here are your leaders as it pertains to odds heading into the tournament. Sungjae Im, Shane Lowry, Aaron Wise, Chris Kirk atop the leaderboard. Some handful of guys at plus 2,500. We welcome in Jason Sobel, as we normally do in the middle of the week as we get ready for this event in the world of golf. It's good to have golf back. So we're moving West Coast to East Coast, and we're in Florida now, Jason. So, look, the field's a little underwhelming, but there's still gambling angles to be had, as you know. We'll get to the gimme later on. You can tell us what's coming up on the gimme later today. But who do you like outright for this tournament?
Yeah, so first of all, Brendan, as you mentioned there, we just had 2 great weeks, Phoenix and LA, elevated events, all the big names. The next 2 weeks, we've got Bay Hill, we've got the Players Championship, elevated events, all the big names. It's a great schedule. I love it. What happens is we have weeks like this one, the Honda Classic, 3 of the top 50 players in the world, 3 of the top 20 players in the world, 8 of the top 50. It's not a great field, and yet this is why we gamble on sports, Brendan, because it doesn't really matter.
Right.
We can find some good odds anywhere. And so I'm going to start my outright card with Taylor Pendrith, who is a big hitting Canadian, very good off the tee at plus 3,500. I think it's a really nice number on him compared to some of the other guys at the top. Last year, had a rib injury, missed about 3.5-4 months of the PGA Tour season. When he came back, finished top 15 in 5 of his last 6 starts, made the President's Cup team. I think he's brimming with confidence now. We've seen some Canadians play really well lately. Adam Svensson won the RSM Classic. Adam Hadwin and Nick Taylor were in it right till the end in Phoenix a couple of weeks ago. I think that should serve as motivation for Pendrith, but this is not one of those weeks where I go, push it all in on my favorite outright. This is a sprinkling kind of week. So I like Pendrith. I'll have a little on Robbie Shelton. I'll have maybe Svensson, the aforementioned Canadian, and Eric Van Rooyen, Dylan Fratelli at triple digits, just a little bit here and there. And then I'll watch the live markets and see how things look after round 1 and 2.
So does Pendrith present an example where, I mean, obviously the odds are equated based on the field, but I think what you're getting at also is if you take a careful look, you can get some edges because the field is slightly watered down.
You can get some edges because of that watered down field, yes. And, you look at the guys at the top. Sungjae Im is by far the best player in this field, and this could all wind up being a moot point if Sungjae goes out there and plays Sungjae Im kind of golf. He won this event 3 years ago. He's played well here in the past. He's in good form, and so that could certainly happen. But, yes, I'm looking for a guy that when we say a good number, when we say plus 3,500 is a good number for Pendrith, there are very few other events where he would have been a good number at 3,500, but because of the watered down field, I think that works. I also, Pendrith is a guy that I've written up many times. I'm bullish on him long-term, and I think this is a good week to take some guys that you like long-term and try to get some investments in them short-term. And so that's what I've tried to do with him and a couple of these other players that I like him in general. I'm not playing him the last 2 weeks for an outright play. He's not going to beat a John Rahm or Scotty Scheffler. I'm not playing him the next 2 weeks. This feels like a nice target for those guys, whether it's Pendrith or whether you just have a guy in mind that you said, you know what, I think he's undervalued. I think he's better than he gets credit for. That should be the guy that you target this week in a tournament like this one.
And that would be taken into account when you look at top 20 markets, top 10, top 5. You have a play in the top 10.
Yeah, again, there is not a bad idea to, I mentioned Sungjae Im. You can get him at plus money for a top 10 this week. And look, I don't like cautious plays. I want to get a lottery ticket. I want to win some big money usually. But if you look at it from this perspective, would you rather have an underdog in a head-to-head matchup against one other player, or would you rather have Sungjae Im to finish in the top 10 where, again, I think he's by far the best player in this field. No offense to Shane Lowry, Billy Horschel, Chris Kirk, or anybody else. Sungjae Im is a massive talent. I like him at plus money for that top 10. And then what you can do is maybe you spend half your bankroll on that, and then you can sprinkle around on some big numbers, try to hit a lottery ticket. We have had triple-digit odds winners in 5 of the last 10 episodes of this event. That said, I'm going with my top 10 on Denny McCarthy, who is known as one of the game's best putters on the greens. He's back on Bermuda greens this week, which is his preferred surface. And the ball striking is getting pretty good too. Last week, he gained strokes with the irons on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Shot 64 on Saturday at Riv, those should all be good things. He was tied for third here a couple of years ago. So Denny McCarthy is a guy that I'm targeting in the top 10 marketplace.
I've been meaning to ask you this, but we're still so fresh in the season. But just generally speaking, especially with this kind of field, Jason, are you someone who likes to dip your toes into the live betting markets when it comes to,
Yes.
Okay. You answered that question. So the
Yes.
follow-up to that would be, is it more challenging to go in live when the names, I know the names are recognizable for you, but would you proceed with caution when there aren't as relevant names, I guess is my question.
No, in fact, because this event usually has a winning score of 10 to 12 under, it's less about the players and more about the scoring. There's going to be a lot of fluctuation at the top. There's going to be a lot of big numbers out there. Double and triple bogeys are lurking with a lot of water at PGA National. And so this leaderboard can flip in a hurry. I will look at guys after round 1, after round 2, even after round 3 with some bigger numbers, because as we saw last week, last year, Sepp Straka trailed by 5 going into the final round. He erased that deficit very, very quickly after Daniel Berger had a really bad start. I can see it happening again. And yes, this is a very, very good week to chase some live plays. I like looking at, by the way, just in general, I like looking at ball striking numbers as opposed to putting numbers. What we found is that ball striking is more sustainable over the course of a round-to-round basis than putting. If you have a hot putting day, doesn't necessarily equate to a hot putting day the next day or the next day or the next day. So I'm looking for guys with good ball striking numbers going into the last couple of rounds, whose putting isn't terrible, but hasn't really popped just yet, and who have some room for improvement.
Okay, that's good stuff. You can catch Jason Sobel and Roberto Arguello coming up on the Gimme, 5:30 Eastern later today. Can you tell us anything that you might want to tease for the program?
No.
Just go.
Yes, we're going to have our favorite outrights, our favorite props. We're going to get into our first round leader bets and our one and done pick, which we've started doing on the show, which is, I think, gotten bigger and bigger. And a lot of people are interested in trying to make their one and done. So we're going to help them out on the show today.
All right, we look forward to that. 5:30, you can catch Jason Sobel, Roberto Arguello coming up later on. Jason Sobel, find him in the Action app, actionnetwork.com. Thanks for stopping by, pal.
Thanks, Brendan. Appreciate it.
And you can find picks from Jason Sobel as well as Roberto coming up later on the Gimme. But from our show with Jason, also Matt Moore in the NBA, Anthony Dabbundo in the world of soccer, Champions League, as well as college basketball. Picks from today's show, previous shows, you can find at Green Dot Daily in the Action Network app. Green Dot Daily is presented by BetMGM. Use the bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,000. First bet insurance. Terms and conditions apply. We are back, folks, tomorrow, starting at noon Eastern. We're live in the app, live on YouTube. We'll have another day of Green Dots, hopefully, for you. Thanks to our crew behind the scenes, as well as our guest, Brendan Glasheen, signing off. Thanks for watching Green Dot Daily, and hope to see you tomorrow.